Buongiorno, boys and girls, fellow artists. Today we're going to do a study with classical conversation concerning Michelangelo. So I'll give you a brief history and then I'll show you the craft which I prepared for the children. To pronounce his name in Italian, it is Michelangelo Buonarroti. Michelangelo Buonarroti. So he has a very interesting story, and I could go on and on and on. So I'm going to probably leave things out, but I'm going to include what I think is important for you to know at this age level. So here we go. Michelangelo was born March 6, 1475 in Capri, Italy. He died February 18, 1564 in Rome, Italy. He was known for being a sculptor, a painter, and an architect. Also, he was very profound with poetry. His education was at the Florence Academy of Fine Arts. And he has a wonderful story. When Michelangelo was little, around 6 years old, his mother was very ill. She was ill practically most of his life. And his father was a banker. Now, the encyclopedia said they were middle class, but apparently they had money. So his father had a hard time running his bank and watching his child while the mother was so ill. Michelangelo had a nanny, and he loved the nanny, and the nanny was married, and so the father had Michelangelo go and live with the nanny and the nanny's husband. Well, the nanny's husband owned a rock quarry in his backyard, so Michelangelo, needless to say, spent many a days and years in that rock quarry, probably going around looking at rocks and playing and imagining things. And I was telling my little class that the other day we had a beautiful, beautiful rainstorm and the clouds were coming in, and I've never in my life seen such beauty. They were pristine white, and they graduated with a layer of gray, red, orange, and then violet. And my grandchildren were in the car with me, and they were trying to make things up about what the clouds looked like to their little imaginations. So we were all trying to guess what figure we could make out of looking at the clouds. And each of us had a different figure. My little Jacob said he saw Jesus blowing wind, and the other saw cookies. And the reason and the purpose that I'm telling you this little story is while studying Michelangelo, he said something so profound that will stay with me forever. He said, "I saw the angel in the marble, and I carved until I set him free." So that was so beautiful, because you can look at something and a million different people will see a million different things. And he would not stop until he carved what was in his heart. He already saw it before he did it many times. He also said every block of stone has a statue inside of it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover what's inside the marble. One last thing that he said that I found profound. The true work of art is but a shadow of divine perfection, which is God. Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit more about his childhood, and then I'll show you our project. So when Michelangelo turned 13, his father realized that he was not a banker-type personality, that he could not carry on with the family business. But his father was thoughtful that Michelangelo loved marble and rocks and poetry and art, so he sent him to a very nice art school. It was actually, he was sent to be an apprentice with a man named Domenico Ghirlandaio in his own personal art studio. After only a year in that studio, a man named Lorenzo de' Medici looked at Michelangelo's work. And he was a very famous man. He was a patronage of all Florentine art in that city. And the Medici family did a lot of things for the church, for indulgences. They paid lots of money for church museums and artwork. So he saw good artwork in Michelangelo, and that's when his career just started shooting off when he got involved with the Medicis. They gave money all the time. They asked Ghirlandaio, the studio owner, for two of his very, very best students. Ghirlandaio chose Michelangelo and Francesco Granacci. They were chosen to attend the Medici's Family Humanist Academy. It was a very exciting time for the Renaissance in Florence, Italy. Art was changing from Gothic and now turning into celebrating humankind, mankind, and womankind. Michelangelo studied under the famous sculptor Bertoldo di Giovanni, which earned him his biggest exposure as a classic sculptor in the Palace of Lorenzo. So During this time, he was commissioned. Now, commissioned means people ask you to do a work of art. Sometimes they ask you, like a pope will ask you, and you just do it for free to get a reputation. Or some people commission you to earn a living. Michelangelo didn't care about money. He just had this obsession to carve and make beautiful things. So during this time when Michelangelo's career was just going crazy, the Medicis were friends with, if not owners or donors, to this hospital. It was a Catholic hospital. It was affiliated with the church at Santo Spirito. He got permission to study cadavers, which are, bodies that have passed on and are ready to be buried. But before they buried them, he got permission to go in there and study them. And that's when he studied muscle. So when Michelangelo was studying at this Catholic hospital, they said he perfected the muscle tone and the bone tone of a statue, where they said the statues looked even more real than the actual bodies. What an artist. Now, the evidence of his best study, they say, all the artists of the time said, is in the Madonna seated on a step at the Battle of the Centaurs. So I haven't seen that, but it would be interesting to see that in pictures or when you go to Italy. So now Michelangelo is famous for many, many things, but I will say a few that you possibly could remember. Number one is for his statue of David. It was over 17 feet tall, carved out of marble, and it was a beautiful statue of King David, who was a man after God's heart. It's a nude, but we have to think of the body as a beautiful work of art made by God, and that's how Michelangelo did it. And there are pictures of it, you can go see it, they've made reproductions of it, and it's just massive. And he was also known for doing the pieta, which is when Jesus was crucified on the cross and they took his body down and Mary grabbed it and she's looking down so sorrowful at her beautiful Jesus son. That's called the pieta. And the third thing I'd like you to remember is he painted frescoes in the Sistine Chapel, which, can you imagine, up high on scaffolds in those days? And he painted with his neck like this because he had to paint the dome. Many of you have been privileged to go see the Sistine Chapel. I never have, but I looked it up. I saw it on the computer. So please look it up or see a program, Google it, the Sistine Chapel. Okay, so one last thing and then we'll begin. In 1534, Pope Clement VII commissioned Michelangelo to paint him a fresco, and it was called The Last Judgment on the Altar Wall of the Sistine Chapel. It took him 7 years to paint that particular painting, so you may look that one up also, The Last Judgment. So that's about enough for now, and I'm going to show you my way of trying to explain carving marble and sculptures to children. So this is a real piece of marble, which I keep my kitchen utensils in, but I wanted to show you, look at the veins in the marble. It's just so beautiful, and God made it. It's out of the earth. Okay, so imagine Michelangelo as a child in his backyard, which was full of rocks, many different kinds of rocks and stones, and they said there was a lot of Italian marble too. So what I'm going to do, I had the children feel this. It's cool. Even in the heat of summer, it's always cool and nice. I think marble's from the ocean floor, at least the ones that they dealt with was. So what I did for the children was I had them get 1 cup of salt, just any kind of salt, and 4 cups of flour. This is just an example. 4 cups of flour and about a cup and a half, so that would be a cup and a half of water. So what they did was they made a dough called salt dough, and I had it prepared for them because it takes a while. And then I got, these are the little crosses the children found. These are the little crosses which the children found when they carved their dough. So each child in class was just given this, a ball of dough, okay? I gave the children a popsicle stick, and I asked them to imagine something in their head, and most of them said, they imagined something religious. So as they carved with their little hands, they carved and carved and carved, and they were all talking and giggling and having fun. Finally, inside their carving was a cross, which I made the night before out of the same dough. I wrapped it in saran wrap so it wouldn't get poked out or dirty with the dough. And it's a cross necklace. And each child got one, and they were thrilled. And it was just like when you think of Jesus, you carve out the cross, which reminds you of his death. It's all relative. The carving and the beautiful art of the Renaissance, and there's their little bread dough cross. Okay, so then I told them I am going to try to carve an angel. I am thinking of the angel of God. And when I was a child, I said a poem, Angel of God, my guardian dear, from whom God's love commits me here. Ever this day be at my side to love, to guard, and guide. So that's what I thought in my heart. So I pretended I chiseled. I'm chiseling, and I'm going to carve an angel, and this is marble, pretending my dough is marble. And I just kept at it, and I'm thinking of a beautiful angel from heaven, and I am creating what my mind is telling my hand to create. And there, out of a lump of marble, is my marble angel. Carve. And there she is, because as he said, he lets it free. He sees an angel in there and he wants to set it free. And that's what we did. And I think this was a great example of how something like a clump of marble can be a beautiful angel. So here's to you, Michelangelo, in your spirit and in your memory, a little angel. So while studying about Michelangelo, one thing stuck to my mind, and it was a scripture that says, I don't know the exact number of it because I haven't looked it up, it just popped in my mind now, but there's a scripture that God says, if man does not adore me and worship me, the rocks will. And I think Michelangelo saw that in his rocks in the rock quarry. So this ends Classical Conversation, Cycle 1, Week 17, and I will say ciao for now, and hopefully you'll join us again next week. Goodbye.